Hello everyone, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share a Halloween Bendi card with you guys. This is my design team project that's part of the 2016 Diamond Dies Halloween YouTube Hop. There are 6 stops on this YouTube Hop, the first being Diamond Dies and the next 5 being of design team members that are going to be sharing Halloween projects using Diamond Dies. Each design team member will be giving away a $10 gift certificate for all of those folks commenting on their hop stop videos. So definitely hop along and leave some crafty love along the way. Diamond Dies is also having a special sale. Between now and November 12th, 2016, you can get 15% off and free worldwide shipping with no minimum purchase required by using the coupon code Christina15. After that date, the normal 10% off is available if you use the coupon code Thanks Christina. Now, let me go through with you guys and share all of the diamond dies that I used on this project. First off, I used the Dynormous Stack'ems Circle Nesting Die Set. This is one of my go-to die sets because it's so versatile. I used this to create the moon, and I also used it to create a mask when I was doing the Distress ink blending to create the background and this kind of ombre effect. Light to dark, lightest obviously being closest to the moon. Next, I used this coffin die set, and this is also much more versatile than you might imagine at first glance. I used both of these outside coffin dies to create this little embellishment piece here. I also used the cross here for that same piece, but I also used the cross as a separate headstone as part of this spooky scene. And all of this black cardstock, just so I could make everything visible, all the details, I inked with a finger dauber and this Sukaneko Brilliance Moonlight White ink. It's one of my all-time favorites for getting white to show up, especially on dark paper like black cardstock. Then, of course, I use this spooky house. I love, love, love this die. And I die cut it out twice, once with black cardstock and then once with orange cardstock so that I could fill in all the windows so they would look like they were shining. Now, of course, when you look at this, you'll notice that they don't have these little cross pieces that are supposed to be like references to window panes. But that's because I took that from this Frankenstein die set. I used the stitches and just cut little bits of it off so that each of the windows would have a little extra detail. Isn't that fun? I love finding alternative uses for dies. Then next is this spooky tree die. Another great Halloween die, but you could use this probably year-round, just adding leaves and things if you wanted it to be more vibrant or green, for example. And I just die cut it out twice so that it would be a little stronger and more sturdy so that it could be attached to the center middle panel of the Bendi card. Then I use the smallest of the Flying Bats die set and attached them, curled the wings a little bit, and then attached the middle parts of these bats so that they looked like they were flying through the air. I also used the medium-sized bat, and I hung it upside down on this branch of this spooky tree die. This one's actually not a diamond die. This is a CC Designs die, but it's retired, so it's really hard to find. Next, I used the Tombstone die set. There's a plain one, and then there's a Rest in Peace, RIP tombstone, and I used both of them. The Rest in Peace one is in that background, back panel, and the plain one is right here. And this cross is actually, again, from the Frankenstein die set. This is the side head bolt, and I use that as a cross here on the tombstone, as well as back here, as well as back there on that back panel again. I really wanted to create a lot of depth and interest, so the more you look at this card, the more of those details you can see. And then, of course, there's this witch. She is attached here as an interactive piece, flying through the air. And I'll show you the details on how to assemble that in the process video that follows. And then lastly, I used the cat die. And I used a Tim Holtz Distress marker in Picket Fence. It's the white one, which is great because it is opaque when it colors over dark cardstock. So she looks like she's a little bit possessed and kind of stalking the scene. Now I'm going to attach a process video on the assembly of the whole card. I hope you enjoy it. As you'll notice here, I've already done the ink blending with the Tim Holtz Distress inks to create the night sky. And now I'm just trying to figure out the positioning of the spooky house. And I want to make sure that it's low enough in the skyline so that the background grassy hills that I am adding to the bottom of that base background is going to cover up just the bottom of that spooky house. If you're interested, by the way, in any of the colors that I use, whether it's Copic colors or Distress inks or whatever, all of that is listed on my blog post, which I've linked to below. Now you see me attaching the left side of the Bendi card, and I actually end up cutting that down a little bit, but so that part's missing, but you see me here cutting out the tab space with an X-Acto knife for that left side panel to fit into. Now I'm going to be doing the same on the right side panel, just gluing to the part that I'm folding back behind that background panel, and that creates the Bendi fold. Now I'm jumping into reinforcing that middle panel, just the area where I'm going to be attaching a brad and that plastic strip that I've salvaged from some packaging. I'm just using plain scissors to cut through it, and I'm cutting a strip that I think is going to be long enough to give the witch that I'm going to attach to it a nice arc as she flies through the sky. And I'm just seeing about the positioning and where it would pivot, and I'm using a 1/16 inch hole punch to punch through that plastic strip, and it's just enough space to position a brad through that little hole. Now I am marking where I'm going to need to punch the hole through that Bendi panel. And now I can align the brad through the front, through the panel, and then through the strip. And I'm just opening up the prongs of that brad so that it's nice and secure. And that reinforcing of that panel really helps make sure that that's going to stay nice and sturdy. I'm using E6000 because that's great for adhering non-porous substances like this plastic. And I cut out an extra little witch, and I'm putting that extra little die cut piece on the back side of this witch just to make sure, again, that this is going to be a sturdy mechanism for this interactive part of this Bendi card. So I've sandwiched that little strip piece between two die cut witches, and there I'm just testing out the mechanism, and it seems to be working great. Now for the fun decorating. I've die cut out the spooky tree, and actually I do the same thing. I die cut this piece out twice, but this first piece I'm going to adhere so that it's in front of this middle panel, and the reinforcing piece, which I didn't catch on video unfortunately, is just glued on the back side. This helps make sure that the really delicate branches of that spooky tree die are nice and sturdy. Now I'm going to be adhering one of the tombstones just to the left of that spooky tree. Then I'm going to adhere another one, the Rest in Peace tombstone, on the back panel piece. And I just want to make sure I'm placing it so that it's visible when the whole Bendi card is folded up. So you keep seeing me kind of dry fitting things to make sure that the placement is going to work for each of the pieces to be visible, at least from some angle. Now I'm adhering the spooky tree from CC Designs, and you'll see that I'm trying to kind of make a triangle and where I position kind of these big items. So the spooky tree on the lower right, then the spooky tree from Diemond Dies on the middle left, and then that big haunted house in the back right. So that creates kind of this triangle, a nice rhythm for your eyes to follow. Now I'm attaching another little cross, again, just to make it more of like a cemetery look, a spooky scene. And I'm attaching here the cat. And I'm trying to decide where to place it so that it kind of will camouflage that brad, which I also actually just covered over with a black Sharpie marker as well to dull down that shine, just because the brad that I had in my stash was brass. This little broom that almost totally gets covered up actually. I just added for a little more of a scene builder, and that's from Diversions. Now I'm going to glue on the 3 smallest bats from the Flying Bats die set, and I'm going to curl up the wings a little bit so that it looks like there's a little more dimension and real kind of action. And I'm using, again, the rule of 3, so I'm going to be adding 3 bats right here. And normally something like this, really small and dark silhouetted, I would try to put in front of the moon, but I wanted to keep the middle area of this card kind of free so that when the witch is flying back and forth, it's not kind of obstructed or conflicting with anything else in that middle area of the card. Now I am trying to find a good placement for the coffin, and I thought that leaning up against that tree would be a great kind of background piece. And now here for a little whimsy, I'm attaching a medium-sized bat upside down on this branch of the spooky tree. I know that most of the time bats hanging upside down will probably have their wings closed, but maybe he just landed. Now I'm just going to be sprinkling through all the Mama Elephant bootastic little kids dressed up in costumes. I probably should have shifted this guy over a little bit to camouflage that Brad again, but I glued him down and that was it. Little Frankenstein is going to be on that back panel. Oh, and if you'll notice, there's a bat off of the head of the little vampire guy. And I end up taking that little bat off and moving it to behind the full coffin, just because that middle area was getting so complicated. I added the mummy by the closure area of the front panel, and then I added the little witch dressed up with her kitty familiar right up in the front of that spooky tree and by the coffin and the little witch's broom. I thought placing her between the witch's broom die and the cat die would be a nice place for her. And I don't know if other people have noticed this, but out of this Mama Elephant Bootastic stamp set, the only little kid dressed in a non-kind of scary costume is the princess. So I tucked her behind the tree like she's peeking out a little bit afraid. And I'm just remembering now that I forgot to add the moon that I had kind of lightly sponged with Tim Holtz Distress Ink and pumice stone. So I'm putting that moon over top of the area that I had masked. And now I'm taking my time and just adding on the little stitches from the Frankenstein die into the window pane areas of the spooky house. That's pretty much it for the assembly of this card. You don't have to sit here and watch me put all the little tiny pieces of these window panes into the haunted house. I'll just come back and show you some final pics. I hope you enjoyed this process video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to leave a comment for your chance to win a $10 gift certificate to Diemond Dies.